And the client in this case is coming to us and saying, can you run ads? Can you help us now get runs on the board? And they're a startup. And Adam, who's one of my team, was going, what do you reckon? And I said, you can. I mean, if you want to throw money at the wall, I said, sure, we can run ads at this thing. Is it going to convert? No. It's very much like a Word document almost, right? It's got no credentials on it. It's got no humanness to it. It's very AI.
Well, welcome to W Leaders Podcast. My name's Charlie Gunningham.
And I'm Dr. Paula Smith.
And we're both on the advisory board of W Leaders and do this podcast together. In this episode, we speak with Oliver Wood, founder and managing director of PWD, Perth Web Design.
Yep, as it was formerly known.
Welcome. Very much great to see you here. Thanks for coming along.
Thank you.
Now, can you tell us about PWD? I know you own other businesses as well. We might get into those. Two very different businesses, but PWD, tell us about that. How long has it been going and where you're at with it?
Yeah, so PWD was started in 2007, a very humble beginnings really out of my mate's front room in North Beach.
Yeah.
And really was a bit of a means to an end. I was a backpacker, landed in Sydney, done a lap of the country, obviously ran out of money,
Right.
sold my van, and I used to work for British Telecom in the UK. So I was
Right.
consulting to small businesses, web marketing, but probably
So were you on a holiday or you'd come to move here?
I was supposed to be on a holiday,
Right.
but my life had kind of evaporated before my very eyes back in the UK.
Okay.
Mum and dad got divorced, family home had been sold, my sister had moved out. So
Right.
really I didn't have a great deal to go back to.
So you thought, I'll go backpacking around Australia.
Yeah, I'd stay. Well, it was supposed to be just a travelling, working holiday visa at that point.
Yeah.
And
At what point in that journey did you say to yourself, I want to stay here?
yes, when I rolled up in Perth and I was just sort of walking down the street, it was like, it was summer, everybody's out and, walking down St. George's Terrace and just going, wow.
And you're a young dude. It's like,
It was good.
Yeah, this is
It was
cool.
good, yeah. And I think, I also happened to get Australia Day, which happened to be at Malcolm Day's place in Kings Park.
Okay.
And we're on the penthouse and, it's going off, there's fireworks. I'm like, this place is nuts. So I'd quite like to stay. So I guess then I started to work out how I could do it properly. I did get employed, but unfortunately I got employed by a company called Saab. Saab's no longer around. So I lost my working visa with them. I enrolled in university at ECU. I was on a student visa. That allowed me to work.
Did you study law? I read somewhere
I
that
did,
your
yeah.
undergraduate degree was in law.
It was, yeah, which is ironic. And so I was doing that in between shoots and lectures, going off to see clients. And back in those days, I just used to cold call people straight out the Yellow Pages. One of my first clients was Handy Rental Utes that you see at Bunnings. So he did a bit of a contra. He gave me a car because I didn't have wheels. I couldn't afford them. And I looked after his web marketing for a while. And but I did all sorts. I mean, I was labouring up in Ellenbrook for builders and just doing whatever I could
Sorry,
to
what
get
was your
by.
degree in?
So I did law.
Degree was in law, but you're doing web design for a guy who is a ute business.
Yes, yeah.
Where did the web design, from your British Telecom?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah. So
right.
it's because I kind of looked at the market at that time and there was, I guess, these institutions, these big agencies. In particular, there was one called Webfirm based out of East Perth.
Yes.
And they had a bit of a stranglehold on the market and
Yeah.
they were just charging extortionate fees.
Yeah.
And I sort of came in it and went, I can kind of make inroads here and offer that very direct personalised service. So back in the day, I sort of self-taught, learned how to design and code sites, very basic, Microsoft front page, and then templates and things came out. I sort of evolved from there. But, it was humble. People used to just come to my house. So I had a house in Inglewood and, people would show up and then I started to get a few employees and then the GFC started to kick in, but we didn't know what it was at that point. It was pre-GFC and then it really kicked in.
So running your business at that stage, was that intentional or was it in survival?
It was survival, very much so, yeah. But I mean, I strategically named the business Perth Web Design because I wanted to be number one on Google. I wasn't at that point concerned about being the next Telstra.
Right. Good keywords, Perth Web
Yeah.
Design.
Yep,
Someone's looking for Perth Web Design. Who comes up number one?
Exact match
Yeah.
keyword, right? So, and there is an element of truth that still survives to this day. And that really worked quite well. We obviously started ranking number one on Google, and I guess my lead generation was fairly well taken care of. We started to get a good name. And then we branched out into other services. So because the issue with websites is that, your cash flow is quite lumpy. It's project-based, so it's deposit, progress payments, and
the we, is that the royal we? Was there others or was it your business?
No, it's my business. It's always been my business. There's never been any other shareholders or directors. I've had plenty of offers. I've had a couple of partnerships. They've gone real sour. So I probably shy away from those these days. I accept capital investment, but on a silent basis, not on a controlling basis. And we just carried on and we started doing quite a lot of sites. I mean, on average, we produce 150 to 200 websites a year.
Wow. Yeah. So quite lumpy, as you say, but what, you've got hosting income as well, a bit of SEO?
Yep.
Search engine marketing contracts? They can go on a monthly basis?
Yeah, correct. And, that gives you some sort of stability. One of the best things we ever did was put in a direct debit system, so we just weren't constantly chasing, those smaller payments, because hosting payments are only, $40, $50 a month.
Yep.
It's just too much clerical and admin to keep chasing those. That smoothed out our cash flow. And the marketing retainers were good because you actually then got to work month in, month out, and you got to see fruition, and they kind of went on this journey with you. And I guess what we've tried to do is have a bit of skin in the game in their results. And I think that's probably the X factor with any agency, is actually having care that they get what they need, because there's real people and families behind these businesses. And I do, as Olivia Roberts, my general manager, will know, have a bit of a soft spot for the Aussie battler. I do tend to go above and beyond for them, especially when they're in dire straits, because I've been there myself. And I know what it's like. It's grim, and, your cash flow pressure, you've got to pay the ATO and you've got to pay your staff. And often you're the one that goes last. So I've had those days myself. So I do tend to empathise quite a lot with them. So search engine optimization is a big part of our business, always has been, probably always will be. Google Ads, social media marketing. These days, for our more enterprise sophisticated clients, we're doing PR campaigns, digital billboards. We've got a client at the moment who's looking for really trying to elevate his brand. He's kind of built this industry, but there's all these kind of copycats, TMU versions of his product coming out. And so he now needs to jump kind of above and be seen as the Rolls Royce in his industry. So we've got to position that with a market message that's got to be clear and concise, but then that needs to be seen. So the Qantas Business Lounge, for example, and be in those places where your C-suites are travelling through, business news, AFR, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of a different calibre of client, and there's not, we don't traditionally deal with a huge number of those.
So backtrack a little bit. You finished your law degree?
No, I didn't. No, I pulled out in basically year 4. And I never really wanted to go into law, if I'm honest. I thought it would be quite handy. I didn't realise quite how difficult it was going to be, to be honest. I was a bit naive there. I was a international student, so fully paid, self-funded international student. No bank of mum and dad, no silver spoon. And I realised that once the company got large enough, I could sponsor myself. So it was a bit of a kind of loophole in immigration law at that point, if I'm honest. And so I set up the company as a sponsor. I applied for the job. Funnily enough, I got it.
No way, really? How many people interviewed for the position?
A lot of people interviewed. They didn't just quite make the cut, and off we went. So, and then after, I can't remember, 2 or 4 years, I applied for PR and then obviously citizenship. So, which I offered to a couple of my employees, which were also from the UK, and did basically the same thing. I think it was a 457 visa back then. I think it's closed now. They've got a new iteration of that, but that's because I had to make the choice. At that point, I had 20 staff and I had, a sizable turnover, 3-4 million turnover. And I was burning every hour God could send. I mean, literally every hour God can send. So, I think even in year 1, international students are held to a very high standard. I think you have to get a minimum of a distinction or higher distinction just to stay in the course.
Wow.
Because they're trying to kick out people that are just, there for a free ride.
Yeah.
So you do have to put in the work, and you do have to, go for it, and you have to have attendance records. You can't just enroll and not attend. So, I was definitely finding that difficult, trying to manage, and I didn't have a general manager or anything like that. I was managing all of that. And there was
no time that you went, I can change my options and do something in design or web or business you just carried on with the law?
I did a couple of optional courses, so I did, which were design-based and branding and things like that. I mean, look, I've got a good eye for detail and I know what I like, but I guess I don't use those in a practical sense. I'm not generally on the tools.
And you find you can use all that stuff that you learned in law to apply in business now, though? Surely it wasn't a waste of time. You would have learned a lot during that time.
You do.
Yeah.
And, of course, in law, you are going to have tussles with people, disagreements and, people that do the wrong. And that could be from clients, that could be from suppliers, that can be from employees. There's many cases that, you need to get professional advice in. But I think... look, there was a case quite recently where we'd done all this work, and funnily enough, it was for a lawyer, and we'd done all the work and we'd done all the marketing and we had all the proof and the evidence and it was all there. And they were essentially trying to shake my company down.
Oh, wow.
And I think, if I hadn't had that backing, I would have been quite intimidated. And I kind of got really pissed off. And between me and ChatGPT, I think at the time, we defended it, we counterclaimed, and we won.
Excellent.
And I didn't need to engage the services of a professional law firm, which is obviously very expensive. And I do think law firms are going to have to adapt in this day and age because, legal advice has now become a bit of a commodity. I'm sure it's also become a bit of a cluster because everybody's an expert,
But it's also a good lesson, isn't it? And I think Charlie will probably agree. It's everything we do in our life will help with our businesses.
100%.
Every experience that we have will show up somewhere in our businesses.
Yeah.
So you talked about AI there with ChatGPT. How is that changing web design? Because over 20 years you've been running PWD. Now people can spin up websites with a ChatGPT or a Gemini or a Claude in about 10 minutes.
They can.
Does that affect your business? And also if you go in to do a Google search, SEO is a big part of your business. Now you go into AI mode and it doesn't even look, there are no ads there. So that must be fundamentally, and you're not even actually having to go to a website. That must be fundamentally changing or is going to fundamentally change SEO and website building for a lot of clients.
Yeah, so probably to talk to the web design part first. Yes, you can. I was looking at one this morning, but it was very obviously made by an AI, and I assume it was made by Claude because there's kind of quirks you can kind of tell. And the client in this case is coming to us and saying, "Can you run ads? Can you help us now get runs on the board?" And they're a startup, and Adam, who's one of my team, was going, "What do you reckon?" And I said, "You can. I mean, if you want to throw money at the wall," I said, "Sure, we can run ads at this thing."
Yep.
Is it going to convert? No. Because it was missing key, and this is where I guess the person that's made that, because they don't have the background and experience that we do, they've missed key conversion elements on that site.
As they've built it, it's not been built for SEO.
It's not that it's not been built for SEO. I don't think SEO was even their consideration, but it was just, it's very much like the Word document almost, right?
Okay.
It's got no credentials on it. It's got no bio. It's got no humanness to it. It's very AI.
Yep.
And, I look at it and you can just tell that it's computer generated.
So it's like a brochure site. It's got nothing.
Pretty much, yeah. And it's kind of thin on substance and it would never compete. And this is kind of my frustration. And obviously people have to go through probably the pain of then trying to spend and waste money on marketing that. And then they'll go, hang on a second, maybe this isn't good enough. This is not going to compete, which is very similar in a lot of ways to, I guess, what we've had over the last 10, 15 years, which is people offshoring stuff to Philippines, India and Pakistan or wherever it is, Timbuktu. And they come out with these generic looking sites with, stock imagery and they just don't look legit or authentic and they don't.
And the person who built it, you can't find again when there's any problems.
Yeah, of course. We've just had it. We've just had a commercial cleaner. He's like, we quoted 13. He went and paid 3. The site's broken numerous times. It's had to be taken offline. We were running ads, so he's not only has he wasted media spend whilst it's been broken. If potential clients went on there when it's broken, those clients are worth $2,000 to $3,000 a month over 2 years. So it's 24 to 36,000 for that contract for saving 10 grand.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we can't get hold of them. They're on WhatsApp. They're on a different time zone. So there's all those problems. And then, they're asking me to fix it. And we go, well, why should I fix it? They're the ones that made it.
So what about the future of websites if everyone's going to an AI mode environment now and there's no ads on it?
Well, with zero-click searches, and if they are going to skip the site, well, kind of great. From a marketing point of view, that makes my life easier. I don't even have to do the website parts, right? So we can kind of move on to the good stuff, which is the marketing component. Look, invariably, Google, ChatGPT, all of these companies need revenue. So ChatGPT's announced that they're bringing out ads anyways. So sponsored ads are going to come into it. Reddit has sponsored ads. I'm sure Google's losing a lot of money to AI searches, but they kind of have to, if you can't beat them, join them side of things. So I don't think they'll be too far behind. But, being found in those AI overviews is just a different flavor of search engine optimization.
Yeah.
Right? So there's many ways you can do that. And getting found in Reddit, getting found in Quora, getting found in press releases, getting found on trustworthy articles, in my case,
across
SEMrush.
social media.
Yeah, correct. So if you don't have that foundation, it's even harder. And the AI often is only recommending 1 to 3 businesses, whereas a Google search, you've got 3-4 ads at the top, you've got 3 Google My Business listings, and then you've got 10 organic. There's like 14 to 17 listings on page 1 of Google. So at least you had a chance.
Yeah.
Now the window is actually smaller.
Which creates even more a need for someone like you.
Well, if that's what they're trying to do, of course, you definitely need navigating. It's hard. Part of my presentation on Thursday is everybody's going, we need Markdown for AI. Well, okay, great. It's great saying it, but how do you actually do it? How do you implement that on your site? Because it's not just click of a button.
Correct.
And so your average business owner will go straight over the head, don't know what they're doing, and they need assistance with that. And then if you've done all your foundational stuff and you're not being found and the phone stops ringing, which I'm sure a lot of businesses right now are starting to experience, because this has happened, in my view,
very
in the last
quickly.
3 to 6 months.
Yeah, it came out in October last year. Yeah. AI deep mode.
Yeah, and then you combine that with the economics of the world at the moment, and you can just tell, that things are, people are getting nervous. There's a bit of angst in markets. So, I mean, what do? You sort of batten down the hatches and pretend and hopefully it goes over the top, or do you come out swinging and try to do something? Yeah. We try to work with the companies that do want to kind of lead the way, be greedy whilst others are fearful. So that's what we're doing. It's a different flavor, I guess. We've built a specific product for LLM optimization, or people call it answer engine optimization. To make sure people do get found. And look, by no means, because it's moving so quickly, is it a hard baked-in product like we had with SEO that we've done over the last 20 years? No, of course. We've only been working on it for 6 months, and it's definitely work in progress. A lot of the things that we test and trial for our sites is what we're offering to clients, and touch wood, seems to be getting results.
Okay.
We've had some clients with amazing results from it.
So you obviously really enjoy what you do. That comes across in spades, in passion. But you're an entrepreneur at heart, aren't you?
Yep.
Yeah. So, and as I've been finding out, chatting to you, and of course I stalked you last night as well, found some really interesting stuff about you. You've got your finger in a few other business pies. So you really are a serial entrepreneur. So what do you love about being an entrepreneur?
Oh, look, you've got no backup plan, right? So, which, I was here on my own. And so I've kind of always been used to that. I left home at, 16, 17. So I've always, I went to boarding school at 10. So I've been very comfortable in being uncomfortable.
I read you were homeless at 17.
Yes, it was, yeah.
Yeah, what a story.
Yeah.
So that just the resilience at 17.
Yeah.
I think what I wrote in my notes is homeless to building a $22 million enterprise.
Yep.
That doesn't happen by accident.
No, it's a lot of hard work, and it's being in the trenches and having to handle different personality types. And, the point that article was written, I had a business called Renovation Capital. That was turning over $9.1 million when I sold it. I bought it off a client. She had a brain aneurysm, told her if she had another one, she would die. She did have another one, almost did die. She tried to sell it. The buyer fell through. I was walking to the gym one day. I was trying to broker some of the deal for her. And I just said, look, I'll give it a go.
So you went to the gym
I was,
and came out of the business. It's a bit like when we discussed, I went out to buy milk and I brought home a hotel.
Yep.
So same.
yeah. So, and it was a wild ride. We were in home base in Subiaco, not far from here, upstairs on the second floor, and you could hear a pin drop. It was just so quiet, and it was like this little cupboard at the back, and I went, this is no good. So we moved downstairs, did a big new fit out. We put ourselves right next to Caesarstone with the view that there'd be a lot more foot traffic coming through. Sort of worked, but still wasn't perhaps enough to where I wanted to take the business, because it was very much, in my view, pump it and sell it on. I didn't really want to be in renovations. But it had a great reputation. She had a great reputation, and she stayed with the business for a while, and I managed to keep a lot of the staff that were there. And then I took on a commercial premises in Osborne Park, and built that up. It was, I spent a fortune on the fit out, $700,000 or something, because it was just an empty warehouse. Put in a whole display, mezzanine, the whole kit and caboodle, and off we went.
And how long did you keep it before you sold?
4 years and 1 month.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I read childcare.
Yeah. So during COVID, sat at home, pretty bored. Had a daughter, or just had a daughter who was a baby at the time, and I really was just wanting to get into something. I looked at all sorts of businesses, cafes, restaurants, you name it, franchises, everything. And I was always very fearful of childcare just due to the regulations and how hard that would be. But I guess I looked at that with another way and sort of said, well, hopefully that's going to stop the cowboys. One of my biggest, complaints probably about PWD's industry is that, anybody with a laptop is a competitor, right? AI, any kid in his mum's basement, people overseas. And there's no standards, there's no rules, there's no protection really. And so I looked at it and went, well, hang on a second, it's licensed, it's protected, fairly high barriers to entry from a capital point of view.
Government backed?
Yeah, government backed. I'll give it a go. And I started looking at centres in Metro, couldn't afford them, started looking regionally, came across one which had a really good reputation, had an exceeding rating for the last 2 or 3 rating and assessments. And probably where they got me is I went out the back, and the current manager and her educational leader pulled me aside, and they're literally in tears. They were just oozing passion. And I was like, I'm in tears. So I ended up buying the thing. Got dicked around by Bendigo Bank for 6 months, ended up funding it through the CBA, and took it and just started to build it. But really took a business where he'd retired. He was 84, very genuine reason for sale. It's in a middle working class suburb. I didn't even know Eton existed at that point. I knew Bunbury, but I didn't know Eton. And went, okay, well, I'm going to be doing a lot of driving, but no dramas. And I just trusted that the director there would carry on. And that sort of worked. But we had a bit of a drama. I just come back from leave and she resigned, and she was the linchpin. And so before I knew it, my investment was really in jeopardy, and I had to kind of go in there, try to rescue it and try to turn it around and improve the brand, because essentially what had happened, we'd had a member of staff who'd come to work and unfortunately brought narcotics with her.
Oh, no.
So,
to a childcare centre.
Yeah, it didn't end up in the centre itself.
Yeah.
It was only in the staff room, but, we caught wind of it.
Yeah.
There was a few people involved. Big hoo-ha, as you can imagine, not great for PR. And so we lost quite a few enrolments. Our reputation went down, and we had to rebuild it from there.
Isn't that the right of business, though? Well, there's challenges that come with it, and how resilient entrepreneurs have to be.
That was the last thing I was going to pick was going to happen, that I'd be in that situation. And then I guess it was the choice, well, do I keep having this one centre, or do I build up a bit of a group and have, I guess, because one centre's got all the costs, all the admin, all the accounting costs for just one centre. Where you have economies of scale if you can have multiple centres going within the region. And so that was really my sort of thinking, was if I could get one, Bustleton, Bunbury, somewhere close by, Dunsborough, Vass, that sort of thing, and build up a bit of a group, they can help each other. Because one of the biggest dramas we had was staff, right? And sharing resources. And so, we've just opened number 4. So we actually ended up buying the building behind that one. And that's going to have older children, and then we have the younger children in the original one.
Now, I also read along the way that you had an international partnership that went a bit sour. And
very sour.
And you nearly lost everything.
I ended up in the district court.
Wow.
Ended up with a criminal
conviction. So can you share anything about that?
Oh, my goodness.
And how did you bounce back from – because it really throws the trust around, isn't it? Like you think you've got a partner in to help you with the business, it goes sour, and it can really maybe damage a bit of your own confidence when it comes to business and choosing partners.
Oh, yeah. 100%. And then also romantic partners, because you're but – God, I mean, that was probably 2012, 2013 when the events took place, which was very opportune timing. As I said, I was working every hour God can send, and one of my outsourced partners at the time, the account managers there, the two of them, proposed this idea. Oliver, why don't you set us up with a company over here? We'll take all your back office. You just be the front. You do the selling, the contracts, etc. We'll take care of the fulfillment. Sounded like a good idea. And I went on holiday for the first time in 6 years, went home, saw my dad, went skiing, did all that stuff.
Thought, this is great.
Thought it was great, yeah. And, all of a sudden money's rolling in, and I'm talking significant dollars. And I happened to be over in Thailand, and I bought them an office, bought them all their gear, gave them all the capital, everything like that. I guess where I probably went wrong, neither of these two put any skin in the game. So there was no financial contribution from them. It was sweat equity. And as a naive 20-something or other, I just went to the accountant lawyers and said, look, don't know these guys from bar of soap. Get me a shareholders agreement to protect me, set up the companies, and just paid. Paid, $5-6 for this document. Turns out it was a $200 shareholders template off Google that anybody could have bought. It was generic in nature, had no...
Hang on. Did you not say you studied law?
Yeah, I did. And of course, but at the time, you just took it on good faith because I'd given that very specific brief and I quizzed them before signing it. You sure this is going to protect me? If this goes wrong, have I got to get out of, jail card?
And you're probably emotionally invested at this stage as well.
Well, you've got stars in your eyes, right?
Yeah.
And anyway, so we're going along merrily for sort of 6 to 8 months, and money's rolling in, and it's great. And I've all of a sudden got all this time, and I'm living the life, and I'm eating out every night, having a great time, just doing what a young 20-year-old would do, right? And when I say good money was coming in, you're talking $700,000-800,000 a month, and our overheads were pretty minimal, so it was good. But then there were a few warning signs. They started pulling a lot of cash out the company, just straight out the ATM, and were having a good time on my business card, and increasingly asking for more and more cash. And I wasn't drawing a wage from this company. I purposely just wanted to build it up, and I transferred a lot of my clients out of Perth Web Design into that business, really to get it going, and viewed that Perth Web Design will do websites and this one will do marketing. And then, we got to the stage, it just happened to be a culmination of events. Google came out with a couple of algorithm changes, and the way that they'd been doing their optimization work essentially just got black flagged. And all of a sudden, all of our clients, I'd probably say 90% of them as a minimum, just disappeared off Google.
Wow.
And so that was it. Clients were up in arms, they were cancelling. Shit was hitting the fan really, really quick. And, of course, Oliver was the only person on shore facing them all. And I'm handing out money left, right and centre. One of the other things that I was unaware of is that, and this is definitely one of the other mistakes I made, I mentioned a debiting system. Oliver used to always control all the contracts, all the debiting, all the accounting processes. At some stage, they asked, we'll do that ourselves, and that will just expedite things and da-da-da-da-da. And they had their own separate phone system. So I didn't have much oversight apart from I could log into the CCTV and see people in the office, but you couldn't hear anything. What they'd been selling to the majority of these people was, pay, $1,500 and we'll guarantee you page 1 of Google within 3 months or something, too good to be true kind of offers. And so, but they were like, no, we can deliver on these. And initially it did look like they could. But they started setting up a bit of a boiler room pretty much. And that's kind of what it was. And I went, nah, this is no good. We got to shut this down. And I had guys turning up to my office wanting to beat me up. I've never even met these people.
So what was your biggest lesson through all this? So obviously you all ended, the relationship ended. So what was one of your biggest lessons that came out of that as a young entrepreneur? Because there's a lot of business owners out there who want to take on a partnership.
Yep.
You know, just they're so exhausted of doing it by themselves. It seems like a good idea at the time. So what would be your biggest lesson to share from that experience?
Look, obviously, don't make a decision when desperate. Certainly seek professional advice and then go get second. You know, that's where I went wrong. I should have got a second set of professional eyes across that contract. But at the time, I'm like, I don't want to spend another $6,000 to get this document reviewed. And unfortunately, I had no comeback because, you know, a year later, the accountant and the lawyer both disappeared. So they were gone.
Oh, goodness.
So that was mistake number one. You know, releasing that, obviously, accounting control and debiting control was mistake number two.
And they had no skin in the game?
They had no skin in the
was
game.
Another red flag, maybe?
Yeah. And
You were all in?
And and of course, I'm like literally going to the Commonwealth Bank of Mount Lawley and just transferring money like it was going out of fashion to keep this thing funded. And probably the third one, I guess, when it all came to a bitter end, and there was this, and I sort of said, "Look, I'll buy you out, you buy me out, or we just walk away with the toys we came with." And
So you're going to buy them out with the business that you had invested in?
Yeah. That was my offer to them, and I gave them three offers. I buy you, you buy me, or we walk away even Stevens. And got a FU and then a dial tone. So that went sour from there. I saw red mist because I was like, fuck you. You know, I built all this. You know, I'm the one that's been here. I'm onshore. I'm managing director. So I went back, just closed down the accounts, put everything back in Perth Web Design and ran off into the sunset thinking that'll be the end of you. Obviously, it wasn't. They rang up ASIC and had a crack at me. So, and then ASIC investigated. I obviously complied. I went, here's everything. Here's why I did what I did. You know, here's the $680,000 I put into the business, which was all forensically accounted for and proven. And then, and I then went, and again, this is about legal advice. I started shopping for lawyers because I was deciding whether I was going to defend it or not. And went to a particular one, Anthony Ayres, and he's like, nah, just plead guilty. It will water off a duck's back, you know, no press, move on.
That's a bitter pill to swallow.
Well, no. And then I went to another magistrate, another solicitor, and he said, no, you know, defend it. You've done the right thing, you know, And of course, you've got to make that choice. Do you spend 120 grand in litigation? Do you put yourself out there? Do you go through a court process? And it was like red or black. And I decided, no, I want to, you know, I've done the right thing. I've tried to build up this company. I didn't do it with intent to deceive anybody or gain an advantage. Anyway, I went and defended it. That whole process between, you know, us splitting up and I guess going to court took about 2 years. And at that point, from a mental health state point of view, you know, you're just trying to produce all your documents, get everything ready. And the pressure's on because there's already, I guess, some press starting to come out.
Yeah.
And
that's not good for the brand.
No. Your personal brand or your corporate brand.
Yeah.
But, I stood up there and explained, you know, very matter of fact what had happened, why I'd done it. And, you know, the judge said, you know, it wasn't sophisticated. It obviously wasn't premeditated. You know, it sounds like a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to kind of the breakup. But unfortunately, you've ended up in it doesn't matter if it was $1, $10 or $30,000, you've ended up in a better situation. As such, you've gained an advantage. Here's a director's ban and criminal conviction.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So how do you move forward from that? Yeah. So you have to just go, that's terrible. I now have to wear this. How do you pick yourself up?
Look, I probably had that cloud over me for a good 5 or 6 years before I kind of picked up my spirit again and went, well, there's no point. You just, because you kind of like, you're always, I guess, concerned about it. And, you know, it's still on the internet today. But these days I'm very like, well, it is what it is. I can't change it. That is part of my business career and history.
You have to learn from it.
You know, you sleep with dogs, you get fleas. And that's basically what happened to me. You know, I learned a lot from it. And partnerships, you've got to be very careful with them. But the key there is professional advice and get it double checked.
Yeah, yeah.
And
thanks for sharing that. I don't go through all that again. That
Nah,
was
I don't
painful.
mind.
But thank you. There's lessons to be said. We've got to finish off, and just before we do the rapid quickfire round, and Paula and I will do sort of back and forth with the 5 questions to finish.
Was that your hint to say get ready for the rapid fire?
I think we do.
Yep,
I just
you
like
for
to
that.
know, at school, so you grew up in Oxford?
I was born in Oxford, grew up as a very young kid in London, Belgravia Square near Victoria Station.
Very
and
nice.
then we moved, we had a farm in a place called Long Marston.
At school, favourite subjects, favourite teacher? Were you entrepreneurial at school? You're running things, were you debating club, head of the hockey team?
Not really, no. Physical education. My favourite teacher was Mr. Bell. And then I think when I was older, it was probably physics I quite liked. I was a bit of a geek.
Right.
I was always playing around with IT.
Right.
So I set up my dad's computer networks when they first came out and, made a LAN and just did that as a very young age, like 10, 12 years old.
And that got into the BT job? Was that your first job, BT?
No.
British Telecom?
So when I was homeless, initially I worked...
So hold on.
When I was 16, 17, I was thrown out of home by my dad.
Right.
And probably fairly so, because I was probably treating the house like a hotel.
Right.
And I worked for a double glazing company. I was on a dialer.
Yeah.
I was on a dialer 9 hours a day. So 3-hour sessions with a half an hour break in, and this thing just connects and connects and connects, and you just got to talk to homeowners and pitch them double glazing, which was a massive industry, or starting to be back then.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I was just making appointments, and then they put me out on the road to actually go sell them. Then I worked for the car shop in Northampton. I was just doing new and used vehicle sales, but it was brutal. You stood out in the rain, or the sun, or the snow, 7 days a week in your red anorak and on the edge of the car park and just hoped a punter came in.
As people walked on the forecourt.
And you were like you seagull after chips. You really were. It was very, very tough. And there were, men there from all walks of life, and it was dog eat dog. It really was. It was brutal. But what it did, it made you very resilient and made you very creative, because I started to realize, well, hang on a second. The rule was you weren't allowed to touch the customer until they walked off the car park onto the forecourt. That was the rule.
Right.
So you used to have to kind of line yourself up to where you think they might walk. And of course, people would turn around, they realize you're about to, maneuver towards them.
Yep.
So I went, sod this. I walked out the front gates, walked down the road, put my arm out. And when I realized, because it was down a lane.
Wow.
Hitchhiked essentially. So I was already in the back of the customer's car by the time they got into the yard.
Wow.
And
how did that go down?
I pissed a few people off. Yeah, but at least I was in the, and I'm getting their
hustle.
details. And I just, it's a long walk back. I just went to get lunch. Would you mind, And so that's what I did, because
Nice
there were a couple
ruse.
of salespeople there that were getting kind of favoritism
I see.
and things.
Yeah.
But it was, what it did teach you is, I guess, that process of making sure you got the customer's details, you qualify them, finding out whether they're going to purchase today or finance or whatever. And what it also taught you is if they leave that dealership that day, you're not selling that car, which was guaranteed, right? They very, very rarely came back.
They very came back, correct.
So that was a really good grounding. And then it just happened to be, there was somebody said I was doing, one of my jobs after hours was selling timeshare.
Oh, no.
Which at the back of an industrial estate in Northampton.
Of course it was.
And I hated it. It just felt ick.
Horrible.
It was ick.
Yeah.
But I did. It was a
Totally.
points kind of system. Didn't do it for too long. Did it for like literally a month, and I went, nah, this is just crap. But it happened to be a guy that was there who did buy one. Funnily enough, I'm not entirely sure why. He said, I happen to work at BT. Why don't you interview there? And
because he admired your sales skills at this stage, because he'd bought a timeshare.
He had, yeah. So I said, yeah, no worries. And then he said, it's in Stoke-on-Trent. Come up in 2 weeks. We're doing this kind of mass interview. The only problem is at that point, I'd lost my driver's license.
There's always more, Oliver.
And I had to get to Stoke-on-Trent from basically just the outskirts of Milton Keynes. Yep. And so I'd left at 5:30 in the morning, unlicensed, and I've driven to Stoke-on-Trent. But they didn't give you the part of the interview, they didn't give you the address. They said, you've got to find out where it is. And there's several BT buildings. I'm like, fuck, you guys made this really hard. And we didn't have sat-nav back then. It was Brooks, right?
Yeah.
I got in Tesco's, got myself some breakfast, and I've got there. And I thought, well, how do I find it? So I just started following BT vans. And sure enough, I ended up at the building. And he goes, well, you passed the first stage of the interview. You found the place.
Ah, that's excellent.
I was like, cool. And then it was very much like, massive great table. Everybody's there. And you had to sing for your supper. You had to literally stand on the table and pitch right in front of everybody. And then they did role play, seats back to each other. And then if you stayed for lunch in the afternoon, you knew you were getting down to the final 10, which I made. And was the youngest salesperson at British Telecom in their entire history, to the point that when I did get my license back, they couldn't insure me on the company car. So they had to give me rental cars because it was the only way they could get me insured. So they put it under somebody else. And then sent me off, went through their sales training process, went off and did different canvases, say Oxford, Birmingham, Leicester, Luton was tough. And you're sent to these different parts of the UK, and you have to deal with all walks of people. And from gentry to tradies to, gypsies to, all walks. And it was very, very interesting.
So what I'm hearing through all this is your creative and critical thinking skills are exceptional.
And
because
resilience.
of resilience,
Amazing.
thinking skills, thinking outside the box, all of those skills required and the hustle, to get to where you are today. Now, one more question before we go into the rapid fire or quick fire questions is I also read you're a pilot.
Yep.
Did you know that, Charlie?
No.
Yeah.
I know, right? There's more. I said, and there's more.
This would be the longest podcast in history.
I know,
if
right?
we go through everything he's done.
Okay, 30 seconds. Is that correct? You're a pilot?
Yes, yep. Just a recreational pilot, but I own a little Diamond DA40, which is a single, 4 seats. It's a nice little plane.
And you've been to Everest Base Camp?
I have, I did that for my 40th. So that was a bucket list thing I wanted to do. And my wife thought I was nuts and didn't think it was legit. And I put my boots on and literally had all my hiking gear, got on the plane, ended up in Singapore.
And sent her a text saying, it's true.
Which was just, the layover.
Bit hot.
Bloody hot. Mistake going outside the airport, but I had a few hours to kill and I'm in boots
Bloody
and
gear
hiking,
on.
mate, sweating.
Yeah.
And but it was a great experience. Went up there, went with a really good company and had a great time, met some really good people. Physically wasn't too hard, but the breathing was definitely very difficult.
There's so many layers to your story, Oliver. Like Charlie said, we could sit here and talk to you for days, I think.
Flying's great though. I
Yeah.
fly with my daughter, regularly. She's only 5 years old. She's got a little headset on. She's talking to me. She's learned not to, when I'm talking to traffic control, she's learned when not to talk to me.
At a guess, at 16, she'll be also get her pilot's license.
I'd like her to, yeah.
Yes.
As long as she does it in a safe way. I've got a little hanger down at Jandakot and go back and forth between Bunbury and Boston. It's obviously for work purposes, the plane, so...
Right. We are going to get these final questions.
I know, I'm going to
Otherwise,
say so. I'm
going
to look
All
at
right.
Charlie now. Okay, over to Charlie. You start.
This is the first thing comes into your mind, Oliver. What's the single most important factor that makes a successful business?
Look, apart from the gumption of the founder and the director, it is, they've got leads and opportunities to go at because that's the beating heart of any business. If you don't have customers to start working with, you really haven't got much. The product's almost second, right? You can have the best product in the world, but if nobody knows about
customers.
it doesn't really
that
matter.
Best kept secret.
Yeah, and I do see a lot of founders that get very obsessed with making something perfect or pixel perfect rather than just getting it out there and then iterating and as you go. And my view is you do it the other way around, is find out whether there's a market and you can get to them and they're going to kind of buy you and then you can backfill the rest.
Okay, next question. I'll do this one. If you were to wave a magic wand over the local business scene, what would you wish it into being?
The Perth business scene?
The Perth business scene. If you could wave a magic wand, what do you think they need? What do you think the magic wand?
They need a bit of a wake-up call, be a bit more forward-thinking.
Okay.
There's definitely WA wait a while. I do think we're falling behind the US, the UK and the rest of the world. And
What with tech, with AI, with
everything really, and they, there's good companies here, and we are very reliant, obviously, on mining and resources industries. So many businesses are associated with that, but they do, even just compared to the East Coast, where things move at just such a rapid pace. Decision making is very quick, and they get going with it. Whereas here, it's definitely a lot more relaxed and slowed down.
economy is almost too good, isn't it? almost too easy.
Yeah, and I think there's obviously people here that have made a lot of money and made a lot of money, especially from property, and that they're very laissez-faire. So, as an entrepreneur in this space, I tend to move quite quick and want to, get things going.
Leadership. Which leader do you most admire? A person, a business leader, a politician, living or dead?
Well, it's not Anthony Albanese, I'll give you that much. Look, I think who do probably inspires me more would be Richard Branson for sure. I think he's done things his own way. He didn't come from money or anything like that. He's got a really nice story. I remember reading about when, which I resonate a little bit. I think his mum and dad, they literally dropped him in the middle of nowhere and said, find your own way home. Yeah. And just some of the trials and tribulations he's had, from good and bad. There was a plane that crashed, there was a train that had a big smash, and people died. And he tackles things head on. And I think on a local basis, Tony Gallardi. Yeah, I've met him a few times. I met him when I fell off my bike, and he picked me up off the side of the road.
Did he really?
Looked up and saw these eyebrows.
My kids went to school with the Gallardi kids. Yeah. So I've known the family for such a long time.
But, he's salt of the earth. He's true. He's authentic. He works fucking hard. I think the rumor is he's about to retire. And he's a spade's a spade. He's what he's doing. And he took on the Potato Corporation. Yeah. I always like David versus Goliath. Yes. I like that kind of Aussie battler story.
He was on the radio as well on the way to the podcast today. So
he's brilliant.
Saying his love for potatoes.
Next one.
Last one. How can anyone listening help you?
Help me? In what sense? In a business sense? Or
any sense?
Look, I think... we're always looking for good people. So if they are good people and they're an expert in their field, right now we're looking for, a really good, professional, ethical salesperson that's going to represent the brand well and, not overpromise and promote our services correctly. Apart from that.
And if they're listening to this podcast in like 6 weeks' time, 8 weeks' time, and they go, it's too late, should they still reach out to you?
They should, because ironically, I get hit up by applications all the time, and there's one which I'd marked as read and just moved on. But I had actually looked through his email and his CV, and I went, it looks okay, but it looks better than the most. And then it happened to be literally 2 weeks later, that role came available.
Excellent.
And I went, hey, guys, team. So you never know, keep
What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah.
Look, you can obviously, where we are. We're in West Leederville. Just pop in and say good day. And we have had people that have done that.
Can't miss the big PWD on the as you're driving out of the city.
There's a story about that sign as well. Yeah. But Oliver at pwd.com.au. And
cool. Yeah. What do you do to get away from it all, relax and refresh? You go up on your plane?
I do. I did that. My 42nd birthday was last week on Thursday. So
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Went for a bit of a lap in the plane, flew over to Roto and up north. Because you're in kind of zen. There's no distractions. I'm quite obviously ADHD, so it allows me to focus because that's all you can do. So it's quite nice. Other than that, I just like being with the fam, taking them somewhere nice and spoiling them a little bit.
Right.
Playing with my daughter in the pool and the water slides. There's nothing better.
Yeah.
She does a lot of things I don't naturally lean towards. She's very creative. She loves to draw and paint and things, whereas I'd rather play basketball with her. But there I am on the garage floor doing a bit of cardboard or something.
Fantastic. Look, we want to thank you for coming along today and telling us all those stories. An awful lot of learnings today in the podcast. Thanks very much, Oliver. That was great. Thanks, Paula. Great to co-host with you. And we recorded this podcast at the Podwave Podcast Studios in beautiful Leederville, WA. Don't forget to subscribe. WA Leaders on your favourite pod platform, so our latest episodes ring their way to your feed. If you'd like what you hear, please leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Thank you, Oliver.
Thanks for having us.